Hello, a warm welcome to all participants. I am Nikhil Kolsepatil from the Asia Let's Partnership team. We welcome you to the webinar as part of the Great Renewable Energy Community of Practice of the ALP. I'm based in India and I'm part of ICLI South Asia, which holds the secretariat for the ALP. We'll be now commencing the webinar. Next slide, please. We have an exciting agenda ahead of us today, and we'll initially begin with an introduction of the Asia Let's Partnership and this community of practice on grid renewable energy. This will be followed by an introductory presentation from our colleague Ilya from NREL to set the stage. We also have an interesting case study on BESS lined up from the pilot implementation in India. And then we learn about initiatives, status, and country perspectives from speakers from Bangladesh and Mongolia. At the end, we would have time for discussion where we want all of us to interact and share experiences as well. Next slide, please. To introduce the ALP, so the ALP is one of 4 regional platforms of a larger partnership network called the LEDS Global Partnership. The other 4 platforms span the regions of Latin America, Africa, and Europe and Eurasia. The LEDS GP, which is a larger network, is a network of practitioners and public and private institutions who are actively engaging in work on low emission development strategies. The LEDS GP Secretariat is currently hosted by GIZ and is funded by the BMU. The ALP is a regional network that caters to the Asian region, and we currently have over 1150 members, and these members represent nearly 20 countries. The aim of the ALP is to coordinate, collaborate, and partner for low emission development in the region, to promote learning and to share tools, best practices, and to facilitate capacity building and awareness through strengthening leaderships. So how we do this through various means. We'll see that in the subsequent slides. Next slide, please. We have communities of practice across various sectors and across topics. So these communities of practice are essentially interactive networks of various practitioners who work in these areas, including this particular CoP on grid renewable energy, where all of us are engaged in work on renewable energy deployment. Since the ALP is keen to address needs of our members, so this year under the GRE CoP, the focus topics are energy storage and strategies that our countries could target for transformation of the power sector. The communities of practice, they provide a number of opportunities for countries to learn from each other and from experts. This is through topic-specific sessions like the one we have today. We also share resources such as country examples, best practices in the form of knowledge products. Also by bringing our members together through large forums, through focused workshops and training workshops, peer exchange events on specific topics. We also offer technical assistance to support specific needs of countries. For example, we are working with Mongolia with regards to energy on this front at present. Next slide, please. We are a diverse group within this community of practice, representing 11 countries, and that's why it's important that there's a lot of knowledge already in the group, and We use opportunities to interact through such sessions and offline as well to exchange experiences, lessons, and successes. We've held several webinars previously under the community of practice on topics such as energy planning, grid integration studies, renewable energy auctions, and this particular one on storage. Also, training and peer learning workshops have been held at the Asia Clean Energy Forum in 2018 and 19, and a few of our members also attended training workshops, including one on energy storage that took place in Bangkok in 2019. We also publish knowledge materials such as one case study on how Sri Lanka is planning for integration of RE generation into its grid. Next slide, please. Apart from the community of practice on renewable energy, we also have similarly CoPs on other topics such as clean mobility, finance to support NDC targets, and building energy efficiency. The links are indicated here, and we've also shared the handouts, this handout, and of course, we welcome you and any colleagues who are interested in joining these CoPs to reach out to us. We have similar activities carried out to support countries there. For example, we've supported Sri Lanka and Bhutan on mobility under the CoP. Next slide, please. In addition to specific technical assistance under the CoP, there is also a service called the Climate Help Desk Service, which seeks to support countries on NDCs, low emission development strategies, and transparency systems. This is a joint service of two global initiatives, the LEDS Global Partnership and the Partnership on Transparency in the Paris Agreement. So these two initiatives, through their networks of experts, of organizations, they can offer no-cost technical assistance to countries upon request. And this technical assistance, other than energy, it also can cover other topics such as agriculture, forestry, waste, finance, and climate resilience. Thank you. I think we have the housekeeping instructions now. Over to you, Anand.
Thank you, Nikhil. Hello, everyone. So here we have the quick housekeeping rules for today. So please note that participants will be in mute mode for most of the time. This is to avoid noise and echoes. At the end of the all the presentations, we will have a Q&A session towards the end. So there is an option to raise hand. There is an icon. You can please click on to that so that we will unmute the specific participant. And at any point of the session during the webinar, you can please type in your questions using chat box that you see at the bottom. When sending questions, we request you to please specify to which speaker the question is directed to. And under handouts option at the bottom, you can download today's presentation. And if you have any technical difficulties, please feel free to send a chat message to us. We are here to help you. Thank you. Over to you, Nikhil.
Thank you. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah, an introduction to this lineup of speakers that we have today. Firstly, we have Ilya, who is from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in the US. Ilya is a grid system analyst in the Strategic Energy Analysis Center at NREL. He is the co-author of the Grading the Grid Toolkit and the lead modeler for NREL's power system studies in South Asia. He also serves as the technical lead for NREL's work on scaling renewable energy in Central Asia. Ilya supports capacity building and technical assistance activities in the Asian region under the LEDS Global Partnership. Next, we have Satish, who's a part of the team implementing the Greening the Grid RISE initiative in India, and Satish is also director at Deloitte India. Satish leads the power sector and utilities work at Deloitte. He has over 15 years of experience in power consulting. spanning various areas therein. He also leads Deloitte's work on renewable energy and its integration on battery energy storage, digitization of utilities, and he has a postgraduate degree in power systems. Next, we from the countries to year perspectives, we have Mohammad Tanvir, who is Assistant Director for Wind and Other Energy at Shreda in Bangladesh. Tanvir has been with Shreda since 2015. His professional interest areas include wind energy, biotechnology, waste to energy, and other renewable energy sources. He's also been working extensively with the World Bank and Shreda project on renewable energy resource assessments. He's worked also on wind resource database for Bangladesh and done some research on alternative renewable energy technologies such as solar powered cold storage. He's also an active member on a number of policy formulation communities of the government, including biogas technology for wind energy guidelines and for EV charging station guidelines. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Jamba, who is from the Energy Regulatory Commission of Mongolia. Mr. Jamba is the director for the Energy Market Research and Cooperation Division of the Commission. He has been working in the field of energy regulation and renewable energy for more than 10 years. He's also the chairman of the Mongol Energy Club, which is a non-governmental organization that supports events, capacity building, and research on energy. Mr. Jamba was also involved as part of the ministerial task team on the Asian Supergrid initiatives, where he specifically looked at Mongolia's roles in the regional energy connectivity and to lead studies on various scenario building. Mr. Jamba has also been involved previously on dealing with the issue of supplying electricity to remote locations using RE hybrid systems. Thank you. I now welcome Ilya to give his presentation and to continue moderating the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Anandan, and thank you, Nikhil. And thanks everyone for joining. It looks like we have about 40 people signed on to the webinar, which is great. And I look forward to a good Q&A session at the end. I really encourage everyone to ask questions. So you can write questions through the chat feature, or as Anandan mentioned, in the webinar platform, you can raise your hand. And if you raise your hand, we'll unmute you and you can ask the question yourself. So we'll have that Q&A session after the presentations. Now I want to start with just a quick introduction. So I'll take a few minutes to introduce the concepts, the key fundamental concepts around energy storage. We'll talk about some of NREL's perspectives on energy storage and the values that energy storage can bring to grid integration. So let's move to the next slide. So here's an interesting observation. If you Google the words energy storage and Holy Grail together, you'll get more than 70,000 results. And if you look at this publication that I found, it's called Energy Storage, a Vital Element in Mankind's Quest for Survival and Progress. And this publication actually, if you look for it, it came out, I think, in the 70s. So energy storage is not a new topic. It's been around, but there's a lot of interest in it right now, and frankly, a lot of hype. So let's try to unpack that and understand why. So we can move to the next slide. So why all the hype about storage, and particularly why the hype about batteries right now? Well, part of the reason is just because the cost is coming down so dramatically. We've seen an 85% cost reduction in the cost of lithium-ion battery packs since 2010 in the past decade. And actually this is increased. So these numbers are from last year. I think that the cost are continuing to come down and projected to come down further. And we're seeing deployment or globally around the world of new lithium-ion storage. It's following a similar trend to what we saw to PV deployment in the early 2000s. So it's going to be important to understand what values this new technologies can bring and how we can utilize these technologies in our grids. So let's move to the next slide. So despite all the hype and despite this holy grail understanding that a lot of people have, we do have to deal with reality. And the reality is that storage has to be cost effective. It has to be cost competitive with other options for grid integration. It has to provide services that can be monetized. And that means that we need to have business cases and business models if we hope to promote storage deployment and storage adoption. We have to really fully understand the costs and the technical requirements that are needed from these large-scale deployments. And we have to understand, how does this change when we're integrating renewable energy? So when we're thinking about increasing the amount of renewable energy on the grid, how does it change, number two, the business models for storage, and number three, what are the technical requirements for that storage? So let's go to the next slide. So at a really high level, fundamentally, the objective of the power system is to supply electricity to consumers reliably and economically. So that means that we're pursuing a least cost electricity supply. And I think that's a really important part when we're thinking about storage, because we have to think about, is storage a cost-effective option for the purpose of serving power to customers reliably? So another fundamental concept of the power system is that consumption and production of energy must be balanced continuously and instantaneously. And that balancing act happens using our different resources on the grid. And we'll talk about that in the next slides. So we can go to the next slide. So a fundamental concept related to balancing is flexibility. And flexibility is the ability of a power system to respond to changes in supply and demand. So on this chart, let's pick it apart a little bit. You see the three colors. On the left axis is the power on the power system in megawatts. And on the x-axis, the horizontal axis, so this is, it looks like 7 days of operation of the power system. And in the yellow curve is the total load, so the total demand from all consumers. In the green curve that I want to focus on next, that's the wind, that's the aggregate wind on the power system for those 7 days. And you can see that the wind picks up in certain times and sometimes it dips down pretty low. The wind is variable. It's also uncertain. And so the net load curve, that orange curve, is what we call the net load. It's the yellow curve subtracting the green curve. And this orange curve is a really important concept. This is what we need to meet with all of our conventional resources, everything including hydro, thermal, coal, gas capacity, and storage, and also demand response and other flexibility options on the grid. So how do we meet this new demand for flexibility? Let's think about that, and we can go to the next slide. Well, flexibility comes in different shapes and sizes. So different types of resources on the grid can give you different flexibility services. And we need to think about what generators are good and cost effective at providing those services. So regulation services, they happen on the order of seconds to minutes. And there are certain generators, certain resources that are really good at doing that. Storage is one of them. We have load following, so this happens on minutes, on the order of minutes to hours. And there are certain generators, like thermal generators, that are really like gas capacity or hydro capacity, for example, that's really good at following load, so changing its output on the order of minutes. Then we have to think about scheduling, so long-term planning, scheduling the power system, how is it going to meet load in the next day and in the next week, and also seasonally, so that has to do with unit commitment on the order of different days. How do we schedule the power system and get flexibility out of our resources to meet that more longer term requirement. So let's think about how storage can provide services across these different timescales. And we can go to the next slide. One thing that I want to point out before we start talking about storage in more detail and learning about some of the really exciting case studies that we'll hear about from the other speakers is that there are other flexibility options on the grid for all of those services that I talked about on the last slide. So in this figure, and maybe you've seen it before, but if you haven't, let's just talk about it for a minute. On the left axis is the cost. On the horizontal axis, we have different categories of flexibility options or grid integration options. And each box is one of those options. So you'll see in the bottom left, renewable energy forecasting. We call that a really low-hanging fruit because it's low cost and it can be really valuable, especially when you're starting to integrate larger shares of renewable energy on the grid. You need to know what's happening with your renewable energy in the next day, in the next few hours, so 4 to 6 hours. That's where renewable energy forecasting is kind of a no-brainer, low-cost approach. And then if we look at the very top right, that's where we see chemical storage, so battery storage, for example. That is a very costly measure compared to some of these others, but the costs are coming down. So that's what we're talking about today. How do we evaluate this storage relative to these other flexibility options? So let's go to the next slide. And this slide shows some of the values that we can attribute to energy storage, so some of the potential value streams. And I won't go through every one in detail, but I think what's important to think about here is that different storage technologies can provide different services. And some storage technologies, kind of like battery storage, lithium ion, it can provide multiple services. And so how do we enable a single project to provide both energy shifting, peak shaving, and firm capacity, and something like ramping reserve or frequency regulation reserves? And in addition to that, can the same project provide a transmission upgrade deferral? Is there a market for that? Is there a way of getting payment for that if I'm a project developer? And if I can stack these different services together, then maybe my project will pencil out. So this is just a way of organizing the different services. And so I encourage you to ask questions if you have any questions about this slide. Now let's move to the next slide. So I want to leave you before we move to the next speakers and start with the discussion. I want to leave you with a few key questions and things to think about as we go into the Q&A in a little bit. So what are the services that storage can provide and the technical characteristics that are needed to provide them for those services that you're looking for? When and where is grid energy storage a cost-effective solution compared to other flexibility options like we saw a few slides ago? And how does this change when we add renewable energy to the grid? So here's another important thing to think about is if we are adding really large amounts of wind and solar, how does that change the net load? And how does that change the ability of storage to provide flexibility? So that's it for my presentation. Let's hand it over and I'll ask Mr. Satish from the GTT RISE initiative in India to present his case study of BESS projects implementation. Thank you.
Thanks, Ilya. So I'll focus more on the battery storage pilot, which we are doing in India. So a broad objective of this program, which is funded by USAID, is to enable pilots which will provide road ahead for integrating large-scale renewables. So we are conducting various pilots, including thermal flexibility, automatic generation controls across hydro and solar plants. However, this battery storage is also one very important pilot where we are working on as of now. So I'll take you along the key element of the pilots where we are focusing and what are the value streams we could have harnessed as of now. Can we move to next slide, please? So my presentations will have three sections basically, starting from the value levers which are there for battery energy storage systems in power sector. Apart from that, I'll also be discussing how we have done specific modelings to derive the values from the battery energy storage systems under the pilot program. So on the next slide, if you can please move. Yeah. So I have tried to segregate the value levers across four pillars. So the first one being important is ancillary services, where in order to manage demand and supply in real time, we need uh, support. So the objective here is to minimize the gap between demand and generation. Because this renewable is also coming into picture, there is a kind of a double kind of variability apart from the load. So how to provide battery support during those shorter period of time, say in seconds time frames, so that my grid frequency becomes in a narrow range. So that is where this ancillary service is important in maintaining the grid reliability, and battery storage do have a promising kind of future in supporting these kind of services, right? Now, other support is black start. When there is a grid failure, you need a small amount of power to revive the grid, and that is where batteries can be used. The other important thing is transmission infrastructure services, where we have been talking about, and we understand that batteries can be used for mitigating the congestion and also provide upgrade difference. So if battery storage system is installed somewhere along the transmission grid, locally it will result in reducing the loading of the transmission networks. And the very advantage with battery energy storage system is that we can control and command how we want these batteries to be discharged or charged. That is a unique behavior. And also we have infinite RAM. When we say infinite, theoretically we say batteries can charge or discharge within a very small time frames, milliseconds, and also they can be controlled. So once we deploy it at a transmission infrastructure, we can harness benefits in terms of transmission congestion management. Technical loss reduction is a byproduct which will always flows, and also right of way constraint management. So for example, if there are issues related to laying new transmission lines, batteries can be used to defer the upgrade capacities. Similarly, when we talk of distribution infrastructure services, we do have this upgrade deferral and other benefits. But talking in terms of a distribution utility whose portfolio is to manage the demand and supply by day ahead scheduling. So there are instances when there are ramping requirement throughout the day. For instance, it's not for a large time, but it might occur for say 1 hour or half an hour time blocks when you need ramping support. For arranging and meeting those ramping requirements, either we go and opt a power purchase from a peaker, power plant peaker kind of thing, or we provide a battery support. So this is a starting point where a distribution utility also needs to analyze what are the time frames when we do ramping support, and then how batteries can assist me in mitigating those requirements. Either it is evening ramping requirement or peak or off peak ramping supports. Apart from that, the last one is avoided renewable curtailment, where either we do a energy time shift or energy arbitrage by using a battery energy storage, where solar is being generated in the daytime, we can save that, we can charge our batteries and discharge at the evening time, or we do capacity firming, that is more on how we are scheduling our power plants. For example, if we are committing that my RE generators would provide these kind of support in hourly basis, we can firm up the capacities by using the battery storage systems. So these are major areas where we can utilize battery energy storage systems to provide great reliability services, capacity deferral, and also to rope in the avoided renewable curtailment and other aspects. Can we move to next slide, please? Yeah. So I'll be discussing more on the battery energy storage deployment at transmission level in the subsequent slide. And please go to the next slide. So this is the pilot which we are doing with Power Grid Corporation of India Limited, which is a CTU, and they have already installed small grid connected storage systems having advanced lead acid and lithium ion technologies, both 500 kilowatt each, and they are already having few basic functionalities, and we have been associated with them to enhance the applications or the values from the battery which is already there. We are working with them to deploy and evaluate these particular applications like dynamic frequency regulation, voltage support, load following, peak saving, and other ones. So the important aspect here is that we want to carry out an integrated kind of application. So what we have done, we have worked with the OEM to reconfigure the control logics of the battery management system and also the battery control systems, so that we can enable and and demonstrate more than one number of applications at a time, and come out with a clear quantifying and parameterizing the values which is coming out from this small battery storage systems as such. The intention is to test the technico-economic effectiveness and also provide inputs in what should be the final standards when battery energy storage is deployed at a grid level. Also, we are working on a detailed national guidance kind of document, which is site acceptance testing standards, which will have a mapping of inputs and outputs, what all testings needs to be done before a utility accepts the final product from a developer or OEM. So that is an important document which we are working on, and maybe we will be able to release that very soon. Can we go to next slide, please? So the earlier slide, we were talking about a grid connected battery storage systems on which we are analyzing and trying to quantify the values which is coming out of it. Apart from that, we have also conducted a detailed analysis for a southern region Indian grid, that is part of India, Indian southern grid, and we have conducted a detailed simulation, say transient stability studies along with our partner PRDC on this. So the intention of this simulation study was to create a small disturbance in the grid, for example, say 500 megawatt outage, and how the frequency goes up to the nadir point and then it settles down at quasi steady state frequency, and mapping the response without deploying any battery storage systems, and how deploying a battery storage systems help me achieve this quasi state frequency in a shorter time frame. So we simulated this exercise and we took a 360-second of the time frame when my quasi state steady state frequency should be within the range, and we simulated various scenarios, peak, off peak, peak generation, and high renewables, low renewables, and the intention was to quantify the value of the battery which is required for ancillary service in the system, so that I meet these kind of performance standards as prescribed by various grid codes and regulators, and how battery can add a value to it. So that exercise we conducted. Apart from that, we also tried to see if my battery storage deployment, for example, 1200 is a draft value. So we are yet to discuss and finalize this, but I'm just showing if 1200 megawatt is the battery storage requirement, which would provide much more assistance in primary and inertial support to the grid. The corresponding benefit is that we are able to free up 3000 megawatt of spinning reserve in the system. So for example, in India, we have 5% of the total installed capacity as a spinning reserve set aside. And if you put that 5% also in day ahead market operations, in dispatch simulation kind of exercise, you harness benefits by releasing this 3000 megawatt of additional surplus capacity, and only we need to deploy say 1200 megawatt of battery energy storage systems. So that is kind of the simulation studies we did, and that is going to be a very important exercise, because as of now in Indian context, or maybe for any of the nation, the starting point is how much battery storage you require, where to locate it. So sizing and siting are the prime initial questions which needs to be answered before anybody goes and jump into deploying a large scale battery storage system. So we are in Indian context, we are trying to answer those kind of key questions, which will provide much more insights to the regulators in coming up and framing the ancillary market guidelines, the operations of the same. Can we move to next slide, please? Yeah. So that was on the transmission system voltage level, which we worked. We also did analysis for a battery storage deployment in distribution systems. Can we move to next slide, please? So in this we have partnered with BRPL, which is a private distribution utility in Delhi, and we analyzed how a 20 megawatt battery storage deployment would make much more economic and commercial sense. So the approach again was twofold. First, we deployed and did a offline simulation on load flow software, where we deployed a battery as at 11 kV bus of a distribution network. There was interconnected transformers, incoming lines, and we analyzed how this battery 20 megawatt is assisting us in differing the capacities, in reduction of the transmission losses, and also mitigating the need of any local capacitor bank requirement in coming years. That was part one. Apart from that, we also helped them in conducting a dispatch simulation, where we had all those generating resources with a specific merit order, and also the load throughout the day. We identified what are the ramping duration, what are the durations when this utility need a ramping support, and if those ramping support can be addressed or can be provided by these battery energy storage systems, how much is the system level cost is that we can save. So those kind of analysis we did, and as of now, if we say what is the outcome as such, so we came out with a kind of various scenarios, like if my battery cost goes below X megawatt per say 10 million INR, then there is a case, and all those simulations we are doing. So effectively we are assisting them in filing a regulatory case with the Delhi regulator, and that is under process. Can we move to next one, please? Yeah. So these are basic. I've just tried to put in here that the ramping support, energy arbitrage, and capacity deferral. These are key benefits which a utility, a distribution utility could harness. If you can move to next slide, please. Apart from so on the next slide, please. Yeah. On this slide, I'm trying to show how this is a generation and demand curve. If you go to the part one is a round shape. So we have got a kind of various benefit or value streams for this battery deployment in a distribution system. For example, we can provide ramping support. We can do energy arbitrage. Like we can charge the batteries when the price points are not high, and accordingly we can store the energy. The other benefit is that during daytime, when the solar generation is high, we can store the battery and store the energy in the battery and then discharge at a later time. Apart from these system level benefits, we also have local benefits in terms of capacity difference on the nearby distribution lines where this battery is placed, and also effectively there is a reduction in transmission losses. So these kind of benefits which we have, which have people have been talking about, these are benefits and how to quantify those things. We are attempting all those aspects in the pilot, and the intention is to come out with a clear policy guidelines which will provide a way ahead in coming up a large scale battery deployment in Indian context. So as I again earlier told that the key starting point for any country or any specific region to start increasing the battery deployment penetration is how much is the requirement, that is the total sizing, and then where to deploy this battery storage system so as to harness more benefits, integrated benefits, and also do a stacked value analysis. So that we are doing through these pilots which are under the program. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll ask. We'll stop
Thank
here as
you.
of now, and I'll maybe request Nikhil to go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Satish. Very informative, and look forward to taking some questions from the audience at the end. So at this point, let's now introduce our next speaker. So Mr. Tanvir from the Sustainable Renewable Energy Development Authority in Bangladesh. Mr. Tanvir, the microphone is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for allowing me. Very good morning, everyone, and I hope everyone is fine in this COVID-19 crisis situation. I will make a very brief description of the energy storage situation in Bangladesh. So next slide, please. Okay. So in our country, actually, we have focused on in 3 sectors for the energy storage systems, mainly on-grid energy storage and energy storage for mini grids and energy storage for solar home system. First, I will start about the solar home system. You know that Bangladesh is the pioneer for solar home system all over the world, and almost 5.5 million storage systems, solar home systems already installed in our country, mainly in the rural areas where the grid expansion is not possible. And this was a great support for the rural people, but nowadays the market is being really saturated, and we had faced some problems in the energy storage systems in the home systems. So I would not give so much importance on that issue. Rather, I will talk about some mini grid issue. In the mini grid, we have around 30 mini grids in Bangladesh already, which is working on. And in the mini grids, there are different types of capacity of the battery storage. I have given one picture here, which is Manpura Upazila, Vola, Bangladesh. Its capacity was 180 kilowatt, and it was implemented by Solar Electro Bangladesh Limited, and with a joint financing of ITCOL, DFID, and World Bank. There is a model of this mini grid in Bangladesh. Like if anyone want to install a mini grid, he will get some support from Bangladesh government. That will be 30% will be grant, and 20% will be owner's equity, and 50% he will get soft loan. So this model still now works fine for the rural people, but the problem arises when the grid expansion is going in a rapid rate, because our honorable prime minister has already given instruction to us that grid will be extended all over the country by 2020. So it was a great important work for power division, and finally power division has decided that we will go for a national grid in all over the Bangladesh, and the mini grid owners will sell their power to the grid. So here is a question of the energy storage of the mini grids, that what will be the future of these energy storages, and there is also some debates about the price issue of the mini grids power, and also the lifetime of the energy storage of the mini grids. So there are some issues. We'll talk later about these things. And another is on-grid energy storage. Still, it is a very new concept in our country. We are still trying to find out that what will be the best technical scope to implement this on-grid energy storage in our country. So next slide, please. So these are at a glance our Bangladesh power sector. I have shown the flow diagram here. First of all, the Ministry of Power, Energy and Mineral Resources is the in the guidance role here, and later on Sustainable and Renewable Energy Development Authority, that means SREDA, and Power Division working parallelly. SREDA mainly works under Power Division, but the work responsibility is a bit different than Power Division. So SREDA is working on renewable energy and energy efficiency. And I have shown in the flowchart that for the energy storage systems or mini grids or any renewable energy activities, SREDA mainly works at the setting the policy and facilitation, And there is also another institution, Infrastructure Development Company Limited, which is also a government owned finance company, and they are working to finance all the renewable energy projects like a mini-grid, solar home system, biogas program, and they are the channel by which the government funds is subsidized to the end user or the owner of the projects, or developers. So that's how the mini-grids are implemented in our country. And for the as usual other sources of the power generation, power division under Bangladesh Power Development Board and Power Grid Company of Bangladesh Limited did the distribution jobs. So these are the channel for the all other power sources. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I have shown that this existing tariff mode here mainly for the commercial and the industry areas. There are different types of rate of scope of rate here, like in flat rate and off peak time and peak time rate. So the main theme of this rate chart is the difference between the tariff of the off peak and peak time is a challenge for Bangladesh, because the difference is very low. So we have to think and we have to think quite we'll do some innovation to find out the technical scope to implement the energy storage. Yes, if we talk about maintaining the quality of the power, that is fine, but we need to do some business model, create a market design here. So this will be an issue for us in Bangladesh to find out that how we can go forward to use on-grid energy storage. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So as I was talking about challenges for energy storages, so for mini-grid, national grid expansion is a challenge. So now it has become a bit riskier to invest in the mini-grid business. And higher tariff of mini-grid power is also a challenge, because the end user is paying much more higher, like around 25 cents for per unit generation. But whereas they are getting the grid power in very low prices, so it has become a challenge for us, and that's why the higher risk investment is involved. The risk is pretty high for the investors. But as government had decided to take the power to the grid, so it is looked after well by the government. And primary challenges for on-grid storage generation capacity of Bangladesh, you know that right now Bangladesh has the generation capacity around 24,000 megawatt, and although we are generating around 11,000 or 11,500 so far, so the demand and the generation capacity, there is a huge gap. And if we even go for on-grid energy storage, so it will be a challenge at how we will manage our generation capacity. So right now Bangladesh government is giving importance on the distribution capacity. So another problem is low tariff gap, as I said before. We have to work on that how we can access to this issue. And another big issue is the capacity building and storage technology. This is a very new technology for in respect to our country. So the people working here, in fact, the bureaucrats, engineers, and even the root level engineers, they don't know much about this upgraded technology. And also that's why actually there is some misconcept about the energy storage technologies, that about its lifetime and also its price, its stability. So this type of issue. And power division along with institutions like SREDA, BPDB are working to solve the challenges. Next slide, please. Yes, so for green energy storages, the challenges are a bit specific. Perceptions of high prices, as I was saying, that our common idea is that energy storage price is very high, and if we include this in our energy systems, and unfortunately it will increase the price of the power, or it will be very costly. But I think this is a very misconception, because the price is going down in every month. Even now it's around 50% cheaper than 1 year before. So it can be cleared by proper capacity building. And lack of standardization is a big issue for all of the sectors in solar home system, mini grids, and also for on-grid storages. The standardization is a big issue. Bangladesh till now does not have a specific lab for maintaining the standardization, but SREDA is working on that, and SREDA has already has a master plan to ensure the standard of the products. And regulatory policy and market design. Regulatory policy, yes, we are lacking of some problem here, but we are working on that, because for to install any kind of grid storage, we have to coordinate with all other departments who are involved with overall power sector. So we have to sit together and set up a regulatory policy. Some initial draft was done, but it's not finalized yet. And of course, we have to do some market design, working with also the financial institutions like ITCOL and other institutions, that how we can create some scope for the developers here. An incomplete definition of energy storage, I mean that when we are talking about energy storage, for the first impression comes that solar home system battery. But when actually we are talking about energy storage, our emphasis is now on the grid scale energy storage. So from the government side, even from SREDA, a complete definition would come that what would be the classification of the energy storages. And technical capacity building, as I said, it should have the highest importance. Next slide. Yeah, in this chart, actually, I have tried to show that in which cases how we can use these energy storages in our power sector. There are three scope actually in the customer services, utility services, and ISO RTO services. So in utility services, transmission, distribution can have a big role. Energy storage can have a big role. And customer services, the scope is a bit low for grid scale energy storages, but industry owner can make a good use of it, because they are using captive power generation, and which is mainly running by diesel or gas. So if they go for energy storage and can combine it to the national grid and also the captive power generation, the combination can work very fine. So from government side, actually, we have to motivate them to go for it, and but we also have to show them the benefit, that how they can achieve their target power management in the industry sector, and what is the standardization facility and also the investment facility also. So this will be actually a coordination job for combining all of the sectors, government and private sectors also. Next slide, please. So way forward, as I said, it's a very new idea for us. We are trying to build some technical capacity building. We will go for arranging some trainings. SREDA is a leading role player here, because we have did the same thing before in solar net metering system, and now it's working quite fine. So we are planning to do the same in the energy storage system also. Stakeholder consultation is a must. As I said, that is a proper without proper coordination, it is not possible for us to implement the energy storage systems in all over the Bangladesh. And business model for risk-free investment, this is also a very important thing. That's why we have to sit with financial institutions like ITCOL and other financial organizations, and also the international organizations like USAID, World Bank, ADB, that how can we can incorporate all their challenges and all their experience together. And regulatory policy and market design, we are working on that, but still we are lagging behind. So I think we could sit together. And ensuring standardization, as I said, if we can go according to our plan, according master plan, by 2021 there will be some lab who will ensure the standardization of the all power sector product like solar panel, batteries, in fact the energy storage, grid scale energy storage systems. Next slide. So in respect of Bangladesh, I have tried to show the benefits of on-grid energy storages. Quality power assurance is a big issue for us. There are, if we can say that there are 92% electricity access all over the Bangladesh, but when the question comes to the quality power, I think the data will be much lower. So this is a big challenge for us, quality power assurance, and also the reliability and resilience. So both can be improved by this energy on-grid energy storages. And there is a scope for reduce environmental impacts, because there are lots of industry and factory who are using captive power generation and using their own machines there. So that's creating much more carbon emission. So if we can motivate them to go for on-grid energy storage, the energy carbon emission can be lower. So it will reduce the environmental impacts also. And another thing is flexibility into the grid. There is a national target of us that by 2020 we will generate 10% of the renewable energy of total generation. So this 10% renewable energy, when it will hit the grid stability will be in a challenge. So for this maintaining of the grid stability, we have to go for grid energy storages. And as per our experience, when we have just connected 2 or 3 solar projects in the national grid, they're facing different types of problem. So this management is a big issue for us, and in future within next 5 years I think there are almost around 500 megawatt renewable energy is going to be connected in the grid. And when you're talking about smart grid systems, it is mandatory to manage the smart grid. You know that without grid energy storages, the management of smart grid will be pretty tough. And the generation cost, yes, we have higher generation capacity, but if we talk about generation cost, there's a huge system loss. So because of the maintaining of the start and stop, and also there are different types of generation sources there. So if we want to reduce the generation cost, we have to maximize our generation scope. So that's why I think the proper management is a big issue, and this management can be done by grid energy storages for Bangladesh. Next slide, please. So thank you very much. This was my presentation for today. I will skip forward to Nikhil.
Thank you, Tanvir. That was great. Really interesting to learn about another perspective and looking at what battery storage can provide for mini-grids in Bangladesh and also on-grid. So now, before I invite Mr. Jamba from the Energy Regulatory Commission in Mongolia, I just want to remind the audience and everyone who's listening that you can ask questions. So you can submit questions through the chat. You can also raise your hand using the raise hand feature, and then we'll unmute you and you can ask your question. So for everyone listening, we look forward to the question and answer session coming after Mr. Jamba's presentation. And in the meantime, I'll invite Mr. Jamba to talk about the legal and regulatory environments for implementing energy storage systems in Mongolia. Thank you, Mr. Jamba.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's good to have all of you in this important webinar. So now I would like to share about what we're doing in adaptation of energy storage system in Mongolia. So currently it's similar to other countries I mentioned in Bangladesh, India, that it's a utility scale storage system. It's kind of new thing in Mongolia. So we discussed how to develop, how to use it, what is the best way to use the storage system in utility level. So the last year we discussed this regulatory perspective. Because I'm working in regulatory commission, I will talk about more regulatory perspective on this storage system. So mentioned the previous presenter mentioned there's 3 area locations. So one is at the generators level, transmission and distribution level. So in Mongolia, so we have the lack of capacity, and we have the connected to Russia and China. During the peak time, evening time, we import more than 250 megawatts from Russia. So be more like defending importing by Russia and during the peak time. So it's one of the main reason to develop storage system is to reduce energy import import from Russia. Also the peak load regulation capacity to have also emergency power source. Also the important thing is of course we have the renewable energy target in our NDC to reach 20% by 2020, 30% by 2030. At the moment we reached 19% of total installed capacity is provided by renewables. So in order to expand renewable energy integration to grid, we need a storage system. I mentioned this, look at the renewable energy targets in Mongolia. So at the moment we have the 290, almost 300 megawatts of renewables, mostly with solar, wind, and hydro. So we have huge resource of wind and solar in southern Mongolia. Also, we have the plan to export the power to neighboring countries such as China, to South Korea, Japan, under the Asian Supergrid initiative. As I mentioned, previous presenter mentioned, there is storage system that are different than renewables. So it can provide different services, ancillary services, like it can provide capacity, megawatts, and also it can provide energy to the grid, and ancillary service like maintaining frequency, spinning reserves, such as, those are very important. So it's a quite different project when you look at energy storage projects. Therefore, we need to, in Mongolia, we need to start to understanding of what is the energy storage system is, what's the different, how to develop, what's the business model would be in developing countries like Mongolia. I agree with the previous presenters also mentioned that what's the most important thing is to determine the need, what's your need, and of course the location. So we start with looking at what is our challenges in grid, why we need this storage system, and we identify that of course that we have base load. Our base load is based on coal-fired power plant. One of the biggest one is 600 megawatts. So that one has like 9 generators, each one around 80 megawatts each one, and we also connected to Russia. So we worked on the determined our needs. So we decided first we need to we should have the battery storage system around the 100 megawatts, and also the other that's the in short term, in 1 or 3 years. In the longer term also we need storage systems, other type of storage system as well. And other next challenge is what is the business model or implementation approach. So there's typically 2 different approach to develop battery storage system. One is transmission company can own this storage system. So it's like you can announce the tendering, the EPC contractor build ESP systems, and can then also then provide 2 or 3 years operation take responsible, then hand over to the system to transmission company. Transmission company can be also, in our case, is state-owned company. It's we found that it's quite easy way to the countries like developing countries, because it can be, we can own the assets. Also, we can have right to dispatch the transmission as the system. And other ways, it's like IPP model, like renewable energies. In that case, it's quite complex to storage system, because there is no regulatory framework established to support battery storage system. But renewable, there are feed-in tariffs, auction systems, something like that. Again, renewables can sign PPAs. But at the moment, IPPs for batteries, there can be signed PPAs, but for other services like ancillary service, there's no incentives for that services. Therefore, we looking for adaptation, that is a model that owned by transmission company. So first, very important project is this ADB project. We asked ADB to help us finance the 125 megawatts of battery storage system. It's a lithium-ion battery. So firstly, we identified 3 locations. First is at the CHP number 4, and 2 of the biggest substations. And we finally selected this Sangin substation, which is connected to in middle of the center of country and south of country. It's a very important location. So we will install that 125 megawatt storage system here. So the loan is approved by ADB. Construction will start next year. Will commissioning end of the next year. So it's followed by startup operation for initial 2 years by EPC contractor. The second project is the 50 megawatt energy storage system. It's a little bit different type of storage. It's redox flow battery storage. It's developed by IPP from the Japan. So next, the last one is the pumped storage system near to Russian border. So it's also been developed by IPP investors. Because of this lack of the regulatory framework to support this kind of IPP project, it's under development, but it's still proposed to implementation schedule start this year and commissioned by 2023. So by implementing those 3 projects, what are the expected benefits are the 2 emergency power resource. Of course, because we have lack of capacity and connected to Russia, and during also the peak load regulation capacity is already important. And the blackest there other kind of benefits we also expecting from those 3 projects. Finally, the supporting renewable energy integration to the grid is, of course, one of the reasons that ADB is supporting this 120 megawatts of project. At the moment, there is kind of the barrier. We have this. What is this? There is some discussion on what regulations define energy storage. So there is no definition in any laws and regulations in Mongolia what is energy battery storages. Then, so we decide that it should be regulated by energy law, not renewables. Even though it supports renewables, it's not far off renewables. It's kind of technology that supports renewables. It's not generation. So then we work out some legal documents that require renewable energy implement this battery storage system. So we worked on the PPA templates for storage system. It's quite different from renewable energy PPAs. Also, we also providing the working on developing tariffs for different services that provide from battery storage system. So the conclusion is, as other presenters mentioned, that it's very new thing to countries, even the developed countries kind of new thing. So we think this operation maintenance is very important. It would be optimal to conducted by manufacturer or EPC contractor first 1 or 3 years. Then after that, the local people like us, we can learn from that and then continue this operation of step. Also, regulation documents very important, the base to support. Therefore, this also we need still working on the establishing regulations, laws to support the battery storage systems. Providing IPPs can develop IP storage system in developing countries, but it's still quite expensive to approach for us to sign with IPPs, because electricity tariff for consumer is quite cheap. Therefore, working with IPPs is a very expensive option to have it. Therefore, we ask ADB to provide loan, then we can own the facility ourselves, operated with our state-owned transmission company. I think it's a good way to start with. Thank you very much. Look forward to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jama. And now I'd like to invite all of the speakers for a Q&A session. We've got a lot of questions coming in from the audience, so I'll start by taking some of them. I think that we won't be able to get to all of your questions, and we'll respond by email to anyone who we're not able to address. So I think the first question will be for Mr. Satish. Someone from the audience asked about if you could describe the key factors, and I'll ask for your answer to be as succinct as possible. So the key factors to consider in the design of a battery storage project, specifically at the distribution level, and what makes that different from a transmission level project.
Yeah. So when we talk of a distribution system, we are dealing with a distribution utility whose responsibility lies in procuring the power to provide the requirement as per the daily load curve. Now, if my daily load curve itself has a peak instances, for example, for Indian capital Delhi, we have peaks coming at during only 2-3 months in the winter season, and also during the late night hours. So those kind of peaking requirements, either you procure those powers from the power market and also strengthen your network, or you use battery energy storage systems during those particular instances to remove the loading. So it is not like only your battery storage systems for meeting this peak power requirement would make economic sense, but that would be a starting point from where you can say, okay, see, my distribution utility is requiring such kind of requirement. I need a battery energy storage systems, and then you can further augment this requirement by saying that this is a very urban area, the right of way issues are there, we have a network capacity different kind of benefits also coming from this battery. So starting from that base, we can then build on other benefits and come out with a viable propositions for because we are regulated market and everything has to be approved in the tariffs. So that is the key points from where I see we should start working towards when we talk of a distribution utility. If a distribution utility has a very flat load curve, there is no ramping requirement support, it becomes a bit difficult to justify the investments based on the economic benefits.
Great, thank you. So now I think we'll move to another question for Mr. Tanvir.
Yeah, sure.
One person from the audience was really interested in what you described about the difference in the tariffs between the off-peak and the peak tariff, and how do you determine that it's too low? So you mentioned that the difference is too low. How do you make that determination?
Okay. First of all, in our power sector right now, every project is going under IPP mode. Every power project, either it is renewable or non-renewable. So our first consideration about the storage was also in IPP mode, but it is pretty tough for all over the world that in IPP mode, if we want to give some gap to the developer, there is a big challenge how they will manage the finance and how they will get the return from the IPP mode. So that option is not actually right now working for us. As I said that we are very initial situation right now. We are doing some feasibility study, and there is a cell of called Power Cell in Power Division. That cell is talking with different consultations about finding out that the scope of the implementation. So the tariff difference actually still now we are thinking that in off-peak and peak period, the gap we are showing just without any tool, just our natural conscience. That's what we are talking. But if we find out a concrete outcome from the data, we have to work with some consultants on this issue, and we are talking with World Bank, ADB, who are the development partner of Bangladesh, and they are trying to sort it out that what will be the actual scope of work here. So we are working on that, and the question was actually that how the tariff can impact the energy storage scope. So the IPP mode is very much challenged if the tariff is like that. But when our distribution company is willing to install the energy storage, that is fine, because that fund will come from government itself, and the distribution channels are working on that. They have already talked with different organizations to install energy storages. So in that case, the tariff is not an issue. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And actually that relates very closely to another question that we had from Mr. Jamba. So Mr. Jamba, you mentioned that there are IPPs currently working in Mongolia for renewable energy projects like wind and solar projects, but it's challenging for storage projects. Have there been any experience or consideration for a hybrid project? So for example, an IPP that proposes a wind project combined with storage in the same location or in different locations. Is that possible?
Yes, that's possible. But issue is how to set the tariff for two different, one for renewable, one with battery. So at the moment we have the auction system. We can ask the bidders to maybe propose the hybrid system with one tariff on a kilowatt hour. So in that case, it's okay. Other case, if they ask maybe one tariff for renewable solar or one battery, of course, battery maybe is assumed higher than solar. In that case, it's there is issue.
Okay, so if the project is combined under one tariff, then that's something that you can evaluate under your current framework. Okay. Very nice. Thank you for the questions. I think that we'll also take a question from someone in the audience who's raised their hand. Mr. Benjamin had a question. Hello, Mr. Benjamin?
Hello. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So my question is, in the future, when we're talking about storage systems for cities in the future, are we talking about them also replacing the traditional substations and the already existing infrastructure? And when we are planning on augmenting cities further with this kind of systems, what are the kind of space standards that are required, for a battery storage system?
Right. So can I? Yeah.
Please,
So,
Mr. Satish, yes.
so when we say that we need battery storage systems at different levels, so when we talk about say at transmission level or at distribution level, it is always recommended to distribute this requirement across locations, not to install at a single location, so that you derive a wider benefits. So this is similar to a kind of transmission network planning where we try to optimize loading requirement, and similarly we place a small battery sizes, not a big one. Now going further to your questions in terms of what is the space requirement. So typically what I'll say, for lithium ion 1 megawatt, it will be close to say 8 meters into 8 into 2 into 2 kind of containers which are there, and they can easily be installed and put in a distribution level substation, say 33 by 11 kV substations. Further, what we have seen that utilities are also opting for small battery installations, say in kilowatt range at distribution transformer levels. So further, if I say that is it advisable to replace a substation by a battery storage solutions? No. We are here trying and pushing ahead for the benefits from the battery systems because of its unique behavior that you can charge or discharge it as per your instructions. And if I replace a substation by battery, that doesn't make sense. So with a battery, with a substation already in place, we can use a small amount of storage to do capacity firming, the load, the peak shifting, and also smoothing kind of applications which we are talking about. So it is a mix of both. It's not very straightforward that in future we are going to do that, but yes, the sizes are coming down in future. What we have seen from lead acid was twice the size for a 1 megawatt battery storage system, which is from there from lithium ion. So definitely progresses and technology developments are going on, and we see a much better size requirement and all those things coming in future.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin, for the question. And I actually have another follow-up question for Satish. What kind of information is needed to be passed to the utility, to the system operator, when a battery storage system is installed? So at the distribution level, what is there?
Yes, so, right. So coming back to the basic dispatch analysis which needs to be conducted takes into consideration the load curve of the utility. What is the loading requirement and how these loading requirements are being So how this loading requirement are being met by the respective generators who are there in the systems, what is their merit order, cost requirement. So there might be few generators who are not able to provide those kind of ramping support. So each of the conventional generators do have a ramping limitations in megawatt per minute. That would create a difficulty in dispatching those units to meet the ramping support. So starting from that kind of broad set of data where we can do a time scale, smaller time frames studies, we can model it in Python or maybe any software tools which are there, and then come out with specific needs when you need the battery. So basically we need a system level dispatch cost simulation kind of exercise at distribution level. At transmission system level, we need a transient stability model and create a disturbance and then see how this battery storage is going to replace my inertial primary, secondary kind of reserve requirements. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And so I have another question for Mr. Tanvir, actually. You mentioned in your presentation about the need for capacity building. That's one of the major challenges that you see. And I wanted you to maybe elaborate that on that a little bit. What specifically kind of capacity and technical capacity is needed to make the kind of decisions that are being made in your organization?
Yeah, I was giving some importance on that because when in our country someone is talking about energy storage, people are thinking that it is just to store the energy and then release in the peak time. But this is not the case actually. There are many more scope there. But then like the power, ensuring the power reliability, the STD power flow, and also in the power interruption. If I can say specifically that there is a organization is Rural Electrification Board who are actually delivering power to the rural areas. So the real scenario is that their power interruption is pretty high because they are unable to deliver the power in their network properly. So their energy storage can play a vital role, but in a different way. And when we are installing the same energy storage in any other organizations or any other industry in an individual industry, the scope of work is pretty different. So people are actually unaware of this thing, that how we can incorporate the storage in different situations. That's what I was telling. I think our power sector is not actually too much aware of that. Very few people are working on that. So we are trying to build an atmosphere here, positive atmosphere, that we can work with this issue. And these are the variables and these are the constants, and find out the scope, business model, market design, and also we can sit with the investors. All are the combination of a total sector. So if we can work together, that's how the capacity building can be done. And without this capacity building, we actually move forward, I think.
Thank you, Tanvir. Well said. And I actually wanted to have the same question for Mr. Jamba, because Mr. Jamba, I think you primarily are talking about transmission level battery storage in your presentation, and if there's any scope in Mongolia also for mini-grid or off-grid storage solutions?
Yes, we, in part of the net metering regulations, we also they allow the consumers install the battery storage system with the solar system during the peak time. It happens occur during the 8 to 9 p.m. in Mongolia. So, and they can use the battery. So the regulation is out there, allow the people installed. Also, be offering the higher tariff if they supply from their system during the peak time. But at the moment, it's but for option with mini-grid is quite expensive when this grid tariff is quite cheap. It's one of the cheapest in the region. So 5 to 6 cents per kilowatt hour, around 9 cents during the peak time. So we still got lower tariff. So there's no incentive. It's not incentive for the consumer to install battery storage. But regulation is out there. But with other hand, and we removing subsidy from energy sector, which leads to increase the tariff, which also push the people increase their efficiency, also install battery systems. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting because it sounds like under very low tariffs, it's really difficult to make a business case for an expensive storage system. But as Mr. Satish was saying, there are more values that you can get out of the storage system than just the energy arbitrage, right? And so, Mr. Satish, I was wondering if you could also talk a little bit about behind the meter. What kind of values can a behind the meter storage bring to the distribution utility?
Yes. So when we talk of behind the meter storage only, we have to be very careful because we will not be able to increase the bandwidth of the services which we might harness from a grid connected storage systems front of the meter kind of storage, because if I install small battery storage systems, so what I understand is if you install across solar parks different battery storage systems, so the behind meter storage systems, what benefits we can get is in terms of providing energy arbitrage, renewable energy time shifting, and also providing smoothing and capacity different kind of few basic applications. But it might happen that for a grid as a whole, these batteries might be opposing each other. So you might be requiring a grid frequency support in terms of excess charging or discharging. However, your behind the meter batteries, they are blind to the system. They might be behaving in a abruptly different way. That is again a cause where you will be spending more resources in balancing those variances at grid level than taking benefits at these behind the meter kind of scenarios. So again, there is a trade-off. What I'll say, you install behind the storage battery storage systems, and you carry out this capacity deferral, the flattening of the output from the RE plants. Those benefits are there, but if you are trying to get more benefits, you will have to link it to the grid connected behavior also. And because what I am saying that battery is a costly asset, we need to increase its utilization. If out of the 24 hours I'm not able to charge or discharge at least 1 or 2 cycles of the battery storage for 3-4 hours, I'm not going to it is not going to make any economic sense. So you have to start pushing, investigating what all modes are there from which I can reap more benefits. Yes.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Satish, and I'm sure we can continue and have this conversation. I wish that we could, but unfortunately we are out of time. I think in summary, there are lots of different scopes for thinking about storage, as Tanvir mentioned, I think very correctly, that it's more complicated than just simply shifting energy, that there are different value streams, and that we need to find ways to evaluate all of them to make business models that make sense. So with that, I'll hand it over back to the organizers, Nikhil, to close out the webinar, and thank you, everyone.
Hello, thank you, Ilya. This is Anandan. Hello, everyone. So before we wind up, we have a few announcements and requests. So the first one is the launching of a new support area under this GRE communities of practice. So the new work area will focus on supporting countries on the development of ambitious longer term visions for energy sector transformation. So an economic recovery will serve as the essential foundation and starting point of this vision. So this support area will help countries to identify the long-term implications of the economic recovery and stimulus programs, and supports integrating visions with the recovery efforts. So a webinar is planned under this new work area in the month of June. So we also request you to participate as possible. And recovery efforts and lessons from key countries will be shared as part of this. And also we are planning to support one or two countries in the Asia region in the long-term visions for energy sector transformation. And in order to understand the COVID impacts on the long-term energy planning of your country, we are planning to circulate a survey. So we request you to please complete the survey to help us plan our activities and support you in your energy planning. And we will also share the presentations recording later in the ALP website and other channels. We recommend you to share these lessons widely in your circle and with peer members. And if you haven't joined this GRE communities of practice, we encourage you to please join to get regular updates from us and to get an opportunity to participate in the upcoming GRE CoP activities. So we also encourage the developing countries and its representatives to write to us if you are in need of any technical assistance on energy storage, long-term strategy planning, or be it any low emission development strategy related topics. And as you may know, the GRE CoP is a member driven. The activities are planned based on member needs and priorities. So let us know your requirements and ALP will support you. And at the end of the this specific webinar, we have a survey questions that will pop up. So please take a minute to complete the feedback. This will help us to plan the future activities. And if you have any further questions, you can please reach out to us. The questions that are not answered, we will get back to you in email. And finally, we take this opportunity to thank all the participants who joined us today, and a very big thanks to the country speakers, Mr. Jamba and Tanvir from Mongolia and Bangladesh, Ilya from NREL, and Satish from US GTG team for the rich and insightful presentations. We hope the participants found it useful. So we look forward to meet you in the upcoming CoP activities as well. Thank you all once again. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.